Welcome to the Medmasters webinar this week. We're going to give everybody a chance to file into the classroom, have a seat, pull out your notepad, your paper, get ready to absorb some good information and ask a lot of questions. So as you come in, I'm Kim Look. I am the CIO of Medmasters. We are a medical training company that not just provides information, but hopefully a lot of the resources and implementation materials that you would need. We focus a lot in the IV space. We were previously very heavily correlated with ozone and photodynamic therapy or photobiomodulation therapy. So some of it, a lot of you probably know us. If I look at your names, I'm sure I'll recognize plenty of you. And then we always get new people too. So have to go through that introduction and make sure everybody knows they're in the right classroom. We're going to be talking, the solicitations went out as shiny gadgets for your IV room, non-invasive components to the IV room. And I love these therapies, been using them a long time because they are so non-invasive, so simple, and have such a great impact on generally cell function. And I love that approach also because that means we can tackle, in theory, probability, we can tackle any type of condition that a patient may come in with. And it's also goes down the wellness longevity optimization trail. So, you know, it really can be universal in your office. And for the IV niche that we are, it can enhance those therapies. So they could be standalones. There's often home use or retail, wholesale retail opportunity for a provider. That's something that some people are interested in. And then just getting better outcomes. And there's reasons to think about kind of ramping up your IV room. I've been doing a lot of coaching, as I keep mentioning, and a lot of people are just curious or worried about the competition in the IV space with the franchises and the ease at which people can get IVs today. And this is one thing that you can consider, is bringing in some non-IV, or maybe you already have a device. Andrew and I deal with this all the time. You bought a device, you spent money on it, and you're just not utilizing it to the maximum capacity. And maybe this presentation or information or platform to ask your questions could help you re-realize some of the value there and then incorporate it more often. But it does kind of take you to the next level, both in market share, and also outcomes. And then I will say, as you know, we have intricate relationships with several franchises and multiple location practitioners, and these types of devices, these non-invasive, that is really hitting the market heavy. You get wellness type, spa type, relaxation type, recovery type locations that are coming into effect. And PEMF is definitely one of those. So brought on a guest to help us go over this information. He's an equipment expert, Andrew Barboa. Maybe you guys have seen or met him at different conferences. We've known each other we figured it was like 15 years or so. The very first practice I ever worked in, bought a PEMF device, very expensive at the time. And at the time, Andrew was traveling, much like we do at Medmasters, traveling to train. He came into the office that I was working in and trained us on PEMF devices. And then even back then, my job was to figure out, how do we incorporate these into treatment plans? How do we staff it? How do we room it? How do we price it? All those components. And then together, did we see good outcomes, which we definitely did. And then, little caveat, I actually was part owner in a practice that was meant to be non-invasive on purpose for oncology and Lyme disease, and it turned into neurological disease also. And PEMF was one of the 5 pillars of our non-invasive practice. So got quite a bit of experience with it, but it's growing, and there's a lot of devices out there, a lot of what did you call it, Andrew? Like novelty and even confusion around the differences. So I think Andrew can really help everybody understand that better. And please use the chat. Use the chat to ask us questions. And that could be anything from explain devices, what brand of device you might have, protocols with it. We're going to go through some of the science, and then we'll give you some resources and even an overview of some of the equipment that's out there. So again, welcome to Medmasters webinar tonight. We are recording this and we'll post it on our YouTube channel in the coming 24 or 48 hours, so you can review it there and you'll get the email with the recording attached to it. So welcome, Andrew.
Thanks for having me, Kim.
Yeah, I can't believe you have on long sleeves
Did
out
you
in
want?
San Diego, but
I can't either, but it's I was falling asleep inside. It was too cozy, so I had to come out and wake up. But yeah, it's good to be here and talk with PEMF with you.
yeah, I would like to give everybody 5 seconds to, if you have your computer or your phone in front of you, to write in the chat if you have a PEMF device, if you have looked at them, if you're interested in purchasing one, or bringing it in, and 3, if you've never heard any presentations on pulsed electromagnetic field technology and research. I put it in one of the emails on purpose that there is FDA approval associated with this for several conditions. And so that's something that's fun as well. It doesn't mean everything, but it does mean something. And we can talk about where that approval is. But write in the chat where you're at with this technology. Again, I've been using it for 15 years and love it, believe in it, and have used many different devices. The practice I owned, part owner in, we even developed our own. So let us know where we need to even start and associate this conversation so that we can make sure to give you the information that you need. So Andrew, just real quick, give a little background on how you got into pulsed electromagnetic field therapy.
Well, I kind of stumbled on it in the chiropractic conference. I was setting up booths at chiropractic conferences for these gel mattresses, and I ran across the booth. It was right across from me, and this manufacturer, it was their very first conference, and they were set up. They had some sales guys there. I walked up, and I didn't understand what it was. It looked weird, and I sat down. I put it on an area that hurt, and I did that for about 10 minutes on a Friday, a Saturday, and a Sunday. And when I was tearing down my booth Sunday, I had no pain. And I couldn't believe it. I was tearing down my booth, lifting mattresses back in the trucks, and I had no pain. And I thought it was the weirdest thing. So before I left, I ran up to that sales guy and I got his card. I said, "Hey, I'm going to call you if this sticks." And he said, "All right, I'll be hearing from you." So about a month later, I went through the holidays, went through, Christmas, New Year's. And that first week of January, I found his card in my wallet, and I said, "Hey, it still doesn't hurt. That's kind of weird." And so I gave him a call. I said, "I got to get involved in this." And within a few weeks, I had a machine, and I was looking at it, and I said, now I got to sell these things." And I barely had a brochure to do it. There was no science or studies that I've known about. It was all new to me. All I knew is that this thing worked. So I said, I got to get this in front of people. And I knocked on doors and called and emailed, and back then it was very, very hard to get into a doctor's office. And I finally found a chiropractor that would listen to me. And he was this real chill, mellow guy, and he's like, "Man, I'll check it out." He was kind of a hippie, and I put it on him, and he's like, "This is fantastic," and he's like, "Yeah, this would work well here." And I said, "Well, all right." So I thought I had my first sale. He said, "But I don't have that kind of money." He said, "But you can come work with me, and you can do the sessions here, and we'll split some revenue, and we'll just make it work." And I was like, "Cool, at least I get to learn how to use this machine better." And so I kind of just stumbled on it, and I was a trainer for a while once I learned how to use it. And then when we got into the medical conference side. I don't know if you remember, we were partnering with Dr. Garrett Gordon, and he was traveling around the country with me, and we were setting up all these medical conferences, and he was speaking about PEMF, and it was pretty much a way for him to, partner PEMF with all the, vitamin C stuff he was doing, the chelation stuff he was doing, and he just got excited about it and started telling all his buddies. And sure enough, all of his buddies just started buying machines. And I was in a lot of really top doctor offices around the country, meeting them, getting other staffs, training them, spending the day with them, and just seeing what these machines could do in that setting. I had no idea just how good it was back then. And it wasn't until I started, learning from some of these doctors how good PEMF really was for what they were doing. And it probably started in like the oncology stuff, and then it went to like joint injections, stem cells, and we started developing a lot of different protocols to integrate PEMF into all of these different things that these integrative doctors were doing. And it was cool because I just go to these conferences, set up a booth, and all these doctors come in and just they do a little bit of therapy while they're at these conferences. Doctors are always they're always kind of the last patient, right? So and I know they're tired, and I know they work hard, and things hurt, and they get to these conferences, and for them to just sit down and I get to charge them up and just get their ear, and they feel better when they get up, and so it started turning into, easy sales, because these docs, they wanted instant results. They wanted to feel better immediately. They wanted their patients to have instant results. And back then it was just kind of, well, Dr. So-and-so has one, I'm going to get one. And, so it's changed a little bit. There's a lot of different machines out there now. We've seen a lot of low power PEMFs come out that are, they're just, you can't even feel some of these machines, and they're basically frequency based, and it brought a lot of confusion on in the PEMF world. And then I started kind of having to kind of explain, all these different machines, because people would call, what about this machine? And what about that? And, so PEMF became kind of confusing there for a little bit. And so what we did is we started making more machines. We started making, from one powerful unit to home units to medium units to super light units. And, the technology got smaller, it got more affordable, and I think even a little more effective. We've come a long way in the last 15 years of PEMF, but yeah, that's kind of my story where I'm at now. I'm kind of, I had to restructure my whole marketing with these new machines that are coming out, because I was in the home unit business for long, but now it's kind of what people want the most, I would say. I'm selling a lot more home units than the big units than I used to, just because of the ease of use, the size, and they're pretty powerful now. So yeah, that's kind of my story with PEMF, what I'm doing today. So
Yeah, it sounds good. When you say
hopefully
home unit, I think of even the benefit of having multiple units maybe in your IV space that they can sit on, or not sit on, but use, right, while they're getting IVs. I also think you could, this was us in the beginning, we had half the office and patient base was IVs. We were doing 40 or 50 a day. And then we had several devices in there, and eventually we did. And then we also had a joint infusion center on the other half of the office. And so we had a system of working all these people through the PEMF device to enhance the other therapies that we were doing. And we did see increased outcomes, but now you could have multiple devices in any of these spaces, and also even loan them out, rent them out. There'd be so many different ways to use this now that it's more portable, now that it's more affordable, and has great power to it. So I see that as a great benefit, even if home users do end up purchasing them. And again, that's always an option to be a retailer or wholesaler. I don't know which way you want to call that, but if you're a provider. So lots more opportunity, I think, is what I heard you say, which is great, and making these more affordable. I know that there's still super expensive devices out there that people are buying. They come with the chairs and the big, loops and all sorts of stuff. So we'll get into that. But what is your, let's talk a little bit about what PEMF does, and then maybe we can talk about how it does it. But there is a history. It has been approved. Not that every device is approved. That's very different than science and FDA approval in terms of certain wavelengths or frequencies, I guess. But in terms of the literature, what are the top 5-10 things that PEMF does?
PEMF is the first approval that was for PEMF was for bone healing, for non-healing bone unions. So and that has come along a long way also. There were these huge machines, and down to now, when you get a spinal fusion, they're going to send you home with a little PEMF device to pulse onto that area of the fusion so that the bone grows together better, and the screws and everything that they put in there actually grows back together the way it's supposed to. So bone healing is kind of what it was known for in the beginning. Then it was the circulation aspects of it. If you can get the blood to separate out and not stack up like coins, you're going to be able to carry more things throughout the blood. You're going to carry more oxygen, basically get more oxygen throughout the entire body with better circulation. Incontinence was another one. So basically kind of rebuilding the pelvic floor. And we see like these big plates that people sit on, and it pulses up and helps rebuild that stuff. Another one was depression. Depression was one of those things where people were taking a lot of pills for, and they finally started looking into this energy medicine about, I forget what year it came out, but it's called the NeuroStar. And this device, it looks a lot like our device, but it's got a chair, and it's got a nice, thing that you put your head up into, and it's blasting about 2 Tesla of magnetic field into your brain. And our biggest machines definitely hit the 2 Tesla mark, and they're getting an 80% success rate with this. And that's phenomenal. I mean, there's not a pill out there that has 80% success rate with depression. And it took a little bit of, the doctors had to prescribe a whole bunch of pills. And once all those pills didn't work, then insurance would cover it, things like that. So people had to jump through a lot of hoops to get use of this machine. But now there's machines pretty much in every major city now where that people can get to if they have good insurance and their doctor is working with them. But depression is one of the big things. Also, there was one with brain tumors. There was a device that was created and cleared for brain tumors. Basically, it's a device that you wear on your belt, connects to like a cap. You put it on your head, and it constantly sends PEMFs through your brain. And in the tumor cells alone, the tumors, the chromosomes would not line up. So mitosis couldn't occur in those tumor cells, so the tumor couldn't grow. So that was half the battle. The doctors, or can now go and try to fight it, shrink it, do whatever. and the PEMF was keeping it from growing. So it was a really cool study that was done, and those devices are in use also. I thought there was another approval also, but there's a lot also. Just to give you an idea of like the studies that are being done on PEMF. This is kind of a little pamphlet that I email people sometimes, but it's about 16 pages of studies, links, all the links to the different studies that are done on PEMF. And when you go through all these things, it's just everything. You can look at a patient and be like, I wonder if there's PEMF for that. Some sort of study for that. Let's say, autism. Yep, here's autism, and there's a study with a link you can click on and read about what's going on with PEMF and autism, incontinence, migraines, nerve repair, neuropathy, obesity, pain, nitric oxide, Parkinson's, tendonitis, tennis elbow, ulcers, wound healing. And wound healing was the other one I was thinking that was cleared also. They started using these PEMF machines in the hospitals to close the ulcers from the bed sores. Basically, it's very impressive how fast the bed sores will close up. I had a customer that bought one for her aunt. She was very elderly, in bed most of the day. She had a bed sore on the back of her hip, and within like a week, it closed up. And she called me, and she just couldn't believe it because it was just getting bigger and bigger for months. So the energy is the key to PEMF, and this energy seems to be, in all these studies, and the FDA is noticing it, and and now it's becoming very well accepted in a lot of things, even in like post-surgery stuff. It helps the inflammation bug out, helps the repair process happen faster. So we're seeing a lot more things out there now, that it's just science back now. 15 years ago, I didn't know all this stuff, but now seems like someone's doing a study somewhere on just about anything.
So let's talk about the energy part that you mentioned. And this is subcellular. I mean, this is atomic components of transferring energy, if you think of quantum mechanics and so forth. But there are different types of energy, and we're getting some comments about micropulse, beamer, TMS. There are different ways of conducting the energy. There are low level and high level. So tell us a little bit about those differences.
Okay, a lot of people get us confused with microcurrent. Microcurrent is, it's going to fluctuate muscles. Sometimes when you see us with our loops, we'll put a loop on and turn it on, and you'll see the muscles firing. So a lot of people think that magnetic field therapy, this PEMF, is some sort of current going through us, but it's not. Microcurrent is, I think it's great for depolarizing pain signal, but and so basically, if you put it on, you fire a little small current through an area, it's going to help with the pain. It might help with some muscle rebuilding, but you're still dealing with a current. A current is something that can shock, something that can burn. Even microcurrents for too long, you risk damaging your nerves. And once you damage nerve, then there's all kinds of sensations that can happen. Burning and tingling, and it's kind of a risk. And the problem is that people like that their muscles fire, so they turn these microcurrent machines up higher, and they use them longer because it feels good. They're actually getting some sort of relief. And the problem is that a lot of them are, actually doing more damage than good, which is not what I recommend. A PEMF is much smaller energy. It's not a current. It's basically smaller than electrons, and it has a charge to it, and it's going to go in and be able to get through everything, through the cell membranes, through the nucleus. It's, if you think about protons and neutrons spinning around electrons, and it's that size, okay, and influencing those to spin faster, to spin better, to make the electron work better, to make the molecules work better, and up and up and up. Everything works better because you have this charge. I always tell, like when you have a more negative charge in your body. So your body wants to be between -70 and -90 millivolts to be healthy. And there's some athletes that are probably even better than that, but healthy between -70, -90 millivolts. When you start dropping into the 50s and 60s, that's where we see a lot of autoimmune stuff start to happen. We drop into -30, -40 in there somewhere. That's where we start to see disease. And so it's all about the charge as far as the health of a person. So, when you think back to when we're in the womb, the amniotic fluid in the mother is a little bit more negatively charged. There's that charge is building a lot of things. Specialization is occurring. So many things are happening inside when a baby is being created, and it needs that charge to happen. Microcurrent is one of the different things that people kind of see. And then you get these low power PEMF devices. Low power PEMF devices are basically, they're spinning electricity in a coil. You get a north and south pole, and they can probably penetrate, maybe like a few millimeters into your skin. And some are flopping the poles every minute or two. But what they're doing is they're creating a little bit of field around your body to deliver frequencies. So there are 1 million receptors on every single cell of your body. And so when you stimulate a receptor on a cell, it can then send transduction to the nucleus to tell the nucleus to do a job. Okay. And, you look at like old Rife machines, right? There was a frequency for everything, right? It was, a frequency for this, a frequency for that. And they got in trouble for saying, that they have a frequency to cure this and cure that. Well, it was a frequency that stimulated certain cell membrane receptors to tell the nucleus to repair, replace, repair whatever it was needed to do in the body with that signal. Well, frequency generators are a lot of times put with low power PEMF devices because they want the frequencies to go deeper into the body. So if you have somebody on a mat that's creating a little bit of PEMF or magnetic field, and then you run frequency, sound frequency, these are sounds that we normally can't hear, but when you run that through, all of a sudden those frequencies start getting to those little receptors much better. And instead of just bouncing all over the room, they will actually go through the body a little bit more. So do they work? Probably. If you have one and your neighbor doesn't, you might be a little healthier in 6 months, 9 months. But it's I always tell people it's like frequency therapy is like getting a bucket of keys and taking a key out and throwing it at a doorknob and hoping that one, you get the key into the lock, right? And then two, hoping that's the right key that turns the lock, okay? So it takes a lot of keys of throwing keys at this to get it to work. So to give you an example of how effective our high intensity PEMF device pulses compared to a low power beamer, IMRS, Curatron, if you take one pulse of a high intensity device like ours, just one, boom, and it goes to the body, it's like using a low power device for 30 hours. So it's I always tell me, if you get some of these low power devices, you got to use them. You got to use them every day, hours and hours, to try to get some results. And really, they're only really proven for microcirculation. That's kind of what they focus on, is getting this microcirculation going, which is true. It probably helps the blood thin out a little bit and carry more stuff, I imagine. But really, to get the benefits of stimulating all those receptors with one blast. So we got 1 million receptors on every single cell. Our machine is going to hit that entire cell wall, shake it, and all the receptors are going to be stimulated. Transduction is immediately going to happen. And now you have the nucleus going to work. There's the Krebs cycle is going to go crazy. You got more ATP coming out. You got more being stored in the mitochondria. Now you have this cell that is a full blast battery. I mean, it is ready to go. And so whenever a cell is fully charged, it doesn't put off things. It says, okay, well, what's this junk in here? Let's get this out. Hey, I need that nutrient going by. Let's pull that in. And so all of a sudden the cell just comes back to life. And if you've ever worked with these machines, you'll know that this is happening, because when you start working on somebody who's kind of ill, who kind of, maybe they had chemotherapy in the past, maybe they had a real toxic environment that they were living in, maybe they worked in a coal mine or they worked at a oil refinery, maybe they're really just toxic, a lot of toxins are stuck in their body, you'll start using this PEMF, and maybe a half an hour in, all of a sudden they start to feel the effects of a Herxheimer reaction, because the toxins that are stuck in them, the cells have a full battery and they start dumping that stuff out. And so that's why it's very important to make sure you're hydrated with our equipment, because the water will flush it out. The digestive tract, if you need to take some binders, like activated charcoal or zeolite to catch things, you can do that also. But I always tell people, you don't want to tox somebody all in one day. You start slow and you work your way up, for your very sick patients or very toxic patients, because these machines are that powerful. And none of these machines out there that are just low power devices, they're not going to do that kind of work. What else is out there? There's see, we got low power PEMF frequency generator. Now there are some strong sound ones. Now we got some big.
If I could ask you, like, what is the frequency range for a low powered or low intensity versus the high? Is that how you would look at this? Is anybody looking at devices would say, well, if it's above or below 27 millivolts or something, that it would be considered low? Like, what does that range look like?
Okay, so it's a little different. Okay, so the frequency is the amount of times the pulse comes out of, or the wave of a sound wave, right? How many waves per second, right? And so if I have a frequency generator, I can make that thing go up and down 500 times a second if I with certain equipment, right? And so frequencies are a little different than high power PEMF. Okay, so the best way to kind of explain this is, basically, if you have a machine and they're saying, oh, we're putting out 120 hertz, 200 hertz, 400 hertz, 300, it's a sound frequency. It's some sort of program that is designed, that somebody studied the liver and said that 440 hertz is good to detox the liver, right? So they're going to have to shake the liver with these sound waves to make it work. Well, that's all with sound. Okay. Now, when you get into PEMF, what happens is when you spin the electricity in a coil, you're going to get a north and south pole. Okay. And so when you flop the pole, okay, if you do it once per second, 1 pulse per second, right? If you do it 10 pulses per second, it's going to go right. There's going to be a flopping of these poles, right? And that's high intensity PMF, is flopping these poles back and forth. And so with our equipment, we have found that a cell, if we send in a high intensity amount of PEMF, we can shake the cell safely with high intensity between 1 pulse and 50. Okay. The cell wall is fine. It doesn't cause any damage. And our bodies, it's in our realm of our body to pulse between 1 and 50 pulses per second. Okay. So a lot of people get that confused because they'll see a machine that says, "Oh, it does 120 hertz." Well, it's not flopping the pole 120 times. It's just sending sound waves 150, 100, whatever, how many waves are coming per second of sound and of that magnetic field. So it's a little different technology. And one of the things that you'll notice is we people, a lot of people talk about like EMF smog, right? So you have all this like dirty energy around us, right? And what they're talking about is that our power grid is set to 60 hertz. Okay. 60 hertz is faster than the 50 pulses that our body as normal is able to do. Okay. And the electricity traveling at 60, basically it shakes our cells too vigorously, can start to cause damage. Okay. If you go to Europe, their power grid is at 50 hertz because maybe they just care about their people more. I don't know. But you're not going to get that EMF smog. You can actually, your eyes can actually pick up on the lighting of the flicker of the bulb because it's in our realm between 1 and 50 pulses per second. So all of our machines are calibrated to pulse no faster than between 1 and 50 pulses per second. Most of the low power devices only flop their poles once every minute or every 2 minutes. Okay, so they're only flopping the north to south every once in a while, but they're sending all these sound frequencies in, okay, just to deliver sound frequencies. Okay, so it's a little. I hope that I didn't confuse anybody, but it is a much different technology. You want to think of our technology more of a electromagnetic blast. Okay, we have a big blast come out, it travels out. There's space between the blast, and then another one come out. Big blast of energy. It's not a constant wave hitting your body. Okay, and that's how our cells can tolerate so much Gauss. So now I need to talk about Gauss. Okay, so the strength of a machine. Okay, so when you all Gauss measurements when I first started were based on calculus. Okay, if you send this much current through this much wire and spin it, you plug it into a calculus formula, and it's going to say you should be putting out this much Gauss. Okay, our first big machine was tested at a college. They did the math, and it came out to 1.92 Tesla, which is 19,200 Gauss. Okay, and that's a lot of Gauss. Okay, it's enough Gauss to fire muscle, to fire nerve. The energy is so strong that the charge of the little tiny particles of energy that are coming out will fire muscle. I would say it takes at least 10,000 Gauss to fire muscle. And that's why a lot of these low power devices won't fire your muscle because they're only putting out 1 Gauss, 10 Gauss, 100 Gauss. I think the strongest reading I've seen in a low power device is about 500. So it's just not enough to fire anything. So because we can put so much Gauss out, we get the instant result. They feel it, it goes through, the cell membrane fluctuates, all the receptors, get stimulated, and that's why it's instant. So, um, Gauss is just one of those things where, um, you know, it's it's going to be very confusing when you start to research around different companies. And a lot of companies out there don't even say how much Gauss is coming out, or the Gauss is so tiny that they put it into milligauss or different types of measurements to kind of confuse you. And it really just means that it's really, really weak Gauss that comes out. But yeah, as far as Gauss goes, there are some machines out there that do put out the types of Gauss that we do. We have a few competitors out there, but very expensive machines. I don't know any of them that do any kind of safety testing. I don't see any of them that are, you know, they won't tell you any of their stats of in the machine. If you call them, say, I want to know this, I want to know that, they will not tell you what their Gauss is, what any of their settings are set at. They say it's all proprietary. But I mean, our manufacturing's been doing it for so long. All of our machines get tested. UL safety. UL safety is one of the things. Everything has to be tested. Your hair dryer has to be tested. Your Christmas lights have to be tested. Anything you plug into the grid should be UL approved, and a lot of these machines out there are not. So I always tell you, never want to plug anything in your business or your home that's not UL approved, just because if there's a fire and that thing's plugged in, your insurance might not pay for it. So you want to make sure you're buying equipment that's safe, that's been tested before you put it on your patients. But yeah, Gauss's strength that you have, the frequency is the amount of waves of sound or the impulses coming out per second. I hope that makes a little better sense now.
Yeah, I think that's helpful information, at least if you're actively looking at devices and hearing people's presentations, just what you might use as criteria to decide if it's what you want. I was thinking back along the lines of just, I was looking up, I went down the rabbit hole a couple days ago of some of the new research with this, and Vicky can share. I found it such a great article from 2022, and it specifically talked about PEMF and the mechanism of action. And there's a couple very specific elements to cell communication and neurotransmitters that require this charge, right? This pulse in order to kind of drive calcium in, potassium out, so on and so forth, and then
Yes.
pain mechanisms. And I think that goes into stimulation. Well, what they talk about, there's a diagram in this article that's so good that, again, just not just the biochemistry of it or the biophysical mechanisms, the physical mechanisms, but then how does PMF actually correlate with that? So it's driving cellular function that then kind of activates enzymes and, like you said, receptors on cells, and then the function of the cell, and then depolarizes the communication network for pain messengers. And so if you think about just even those two components of what this can do, it does become something that really can enhance IV therapy, any of your pain treatments, like you mentioned, stem cells, human cellular tissue products, prolozone, PRP, and really kind of, you can treat pain, especially before any of those. So people come in acute pain, chronic pain, and then you can do your treatment and stimulate. The reason why it's, it does stimulate osteoblasts. It does stimulate healing components of bone, and also stimulates phase 2, phase 3 of the healing process, right? First is inflammation, but it actually gets the body to go beyond the inflammatory state and actually heal up. So you can use it post your injections or that's why chiropractors are using it. Again, these are great tools for them because they don't have a lot of injection capacity in their scope usually. But it's stimulating those nerve impulses, those cell pulses to communicate to different mechanisms that are required for basic function. And again, I think she's going to put it in the chat, but it's just a great article. Wound healing, bone repair, tendonitis, what, you know, they would never say it's treatment for cancer, but adjuvant treatment for cancer. And then there's some diagrams there that can really help understand how this is working. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But you will see if you're using, go for it.
I have a funny story about like the biochemistry and stuff about that, and it's you know this doctor, by the way, and I had the doctor. He's in the San Francisco area. I think you know who he is, and I could not get this doctor to buy a machine for the life of me. Okay, he was. I would see him at all these conferences. He would stop by the booth. He would charge up. He would take the flyers. And it was like 3 years. I kept saying, "Hey, when are you going to get a machine? I see you at all the conferences. All your buddies have them." And he just shined me on. I mean, just he didn't get it. He didn't understand I think he thought it was kind of voodoo. And so I was able to get a machine in his office with a gal that was working on patients in there. He finally said, "All right, bring it in." He didn't have to pay for the machine. So he had the girl come in and start working on patients. So a few months go by. I knew the girl and I was checking on her, and she was going through protocols. I was helping her with some things. And he said, "All right, Andrew, I need you to come up here." So I flew up, and he takes me back into his little tiny office. And I go into his little office, and we sit down, and he looks at me, and he says, "Andrew, I didn't get PEMF. I didn't understand it. And I had some patients, and I didn't really know what to do with these patients." He said, they didn't look good. That I wasn't sure. It didn't seem like they were going to survive their diseases. And I just kind of said, "All right, well, go use that machine and have the girl work on you, make them comfortable," right? It was just kind of well, I have this modality in here that, that I was told that works, right? And so the gal was working on these patients, and he looks at me and says, "Hey, Andrew, I didn't know what these patients were what was gonna happen with them, but when I redid all of their blood work and their numbers and their markers, they're getting better. So I gotta have some machines now." So he finally realized that all that biochemistry that's happening inside the body to improve all these different numbers and markers inside the body, he actually had to see that with his own patients to make a decision to buy a machine. And he finally did, and he still uses the machine, to this day. But that just goes to show, we run all this blood work, we do all these markers, we do all this stuff, but how are each of those little numbers going to improve if you don't change what's happening chemically inside the body, at the molecular level, at the atomic level? That's how you get the changes. And all these IVs going in, not working well because the body didn't have the right charge. The body didn't have the ability to make the exchanges happen. So when you are doing all this stuff to help your patients, the body has to be at the right playing field. And that's what PEMF does, is it changes inside your body and allows those exchanges to happen so that everything you're doing works better.
Yeah, I may have had a little bit of his ear at that Just
You might have, but
just
that's what he told me. He closed the door too. He closed the door, and I sat back there, and he said, "They're getting better." So, it
Yeah,
was
what's
great.
interesting
It was
is
great to hear.
he definitely had some of the sick of the sick. I could name drop some of his patients and everybody would know who they are. Some of the most famous people in our country and even outside and still very sick. And he was doing a lot of great things and it did become, yes, something that makes him comfortable and also something that actually helped him get well. He did a lot of oncology, and so it fits right in with just cellular communication, right? When that goes well, cancer doesn't exist.
That's right.
But yeah, the electrical component to the body, what are we? I mean, 30% electrical, I'd say. There's some range of numbers there, but it's not fair to the entire system to leave that part of treatment or healing out of it, right? There's physical, there's emotional, mental, cognitive, there is energy required. And every cell is like a battery and needs to be charged. And we're always inundated with things that are negatively charging or draining that battery of every cell as well. So it's just a piece you've got to bring in. And that sodium, potassium, diffusion center of every cell that's required. The what's it called? The electrochemical gradient that's the diffusion of pushing something lower to higher volume is something that's dependent on this. And again, where else do we get it from? We're supposed to be getting it from the earth. We're supposed to be getting it from grounding, from being in natural places. And not only do we have the inundation of the negative side, but most of us don't get out and do that as well. So it's something that is decreasing more and more as we age, more and more as technology evolves. Um, you know, and so many prevalent practitioners like Joe Mercola writing books, etc., on the dangers of it. So it's just you can't really treat effectively without that. We talk a lot about procaine. Procaine has a lot of that same stimulation, especially with that that electrochemical gradient in terms of potassium and sodium. So there's different ways to get it, but again, this is so easy, so non-invasive. You sit on it and you'll feel better immediately if you've got the right stuff. We did get a question about your device. You were talking about how much Gauss or Tesla is in that machine.
How much is in our machine?
Yeah, the one you're talking about, the one more portable.
Oh, we just got some readings on that machine. And it came between about 9 and 12,000 Gauss. So plenty of power to fire muscle and nerve, and that's pretty much all you need. Most people on our big devices that put out 20,000 Gauss, they only use the machine about halfway up. They can't even turn it up that high.
Yeah.
So I think between 10 and 12,000 Gauss is right where the sweet spot is for charging people's bodies up at the cellular level. So it's just like going to the doctor's office and using the big equipment. It doesn't go up to the highest levels. You need higher levels of magnetic field or Gauss for extremities. Extremities like your feet, your ankles, wrist, elbows. The more intensity on the extremities, the more you can feel it on your extremities because they're small muscles, small bones. They don't fire like the big muscles and nerves throughout our torso. So people will put it on their hand and be like, well, I don't really feel it that much. And it's not that it's not working. It's still doing everything exactly the same at the cellular level. It's just that there's not enough Gauss to fire those tiny muscles um, and make it a sensation of a feeling. But if you use our highest powered machines, you can feel it in your hands, you can feel it in your feet. You just got to put more Gauss. And then there's you know you want to think of the comfort also. We didn't want to have home devices where people can turn it up to where it's not comfortable. even this one at 10, 12,000 Gauss, some people cannot take the pulse of this. It is very strong. So we have some techniques for them to use so that they can acclimate their body and get used to the pulse. But yeah, they're strong. But we also wanted to think comfort also on these machines.
So what is the best way, or how do they work? I know you can get mats, there's coils, there's all sorts of things. I like the coils because you can isolate on an injury or pancreas, or you can focus the energy that way. But there's a lot of stuff out there in terms of PEMF mats. And if you're thinking like, put this on 3 out of your 10 IV chairs, and now those people that pay a little extra or are members to get this enhancement in their IV with their IV, what's an easy way to do that? And or maybe some other centers in a facility that might incorporate mats or coils, or the best way to use it.
Okay, when our machines first came out, all we had was coils. All we had was a large coil, and then we had a double coil that was a double you can put around joints and things like that. And then we had a rope that you can wrap around wrists and ankles. We really didn't develop the mat until all of these other devices started coming out and they had mats. Everybody wanted a mat. We were like, what does everybody want a mat for? We didn't get it because this ring right here, if I put this over my torso, this is going to send energy all the way through down my feet and up out this patio. Okay, there's enough energy to charge every cell in my body with just this ring. Okay, if I were to sit on this ring, same thing. If I were to put it behind my back, charge my torso, I can move it around and charge up my body just fine. But everybody wanted a mat. So we started creating mats, and these mats just have this lollipop configuration of wire, and you can place them on a massage table or in an IV chair. And people are like, oh, this is just easier to put someone on a mat. Well, it is for cell charge, for IVs, for autoimmune, for working with disease, things like that. You just need to change the cell membrane potential in a cell. So a mat's just fine. It'll charge the body, and it's just easier. When you start thinking portability, it's a little difficult to lug around a mat. And so a lot of people were like, all right, so we had bags made for them and things, and people would take them and stuff. So it's one of those things where with this new unit, our new unit is the size of a tissue box. Okay, so think of a tissue box, and what we did is we said, look, go back to these loops. This one's permanently attached to this machine, and I can wind this up, put it into my suitcase. I can put it into a little case. It doesn't draw that much power. You can plug it in just about anywhere, and I can charge my entire body with one loop. Okay. Now we can also permanently attach a double. Okay. So we can do a double. So this is more for joints. But they're bigger. It's a little bit bigger, but imagine 2 of these things. So you can kind of put it around your joint, put it around the body, and you can kind of get everywhere. And you just got this little box and one loop. You can also get this machine permanently attached with just a mat. So if you're like, nope, I'm going to put it in that room, I want it on that table, and I want a mat, you can have it plugged in with just that. I want to send people in there and lay on it. Or maybe you have somebody who's bedridden. Okay. And so they just want a mat in this machine, and that's it. They're not going to be able to move it around. It's going to be too hard or whatever. We can permanently attach it. Then we make these machines where this is an interchangeable. Okay. So you can have a single loop, a double loop, a mat. We even make a paddle. But we make these versatile also. So I'm introducing these machines to doctors, with these coils, because I want people to realize that these coils are plenty of power to charge things up. So if you're in an IV room and you have, 4 or 5 whatever, you can literally just go in, drop it over their neck, stick this on their lap, hit 30 minutes. They're going to charge up for half an hour. You can take it off, go to the next person, go to the next person. You don't have to deal with a big mat behind them getting up, putting the mat behind them, things like that. They got IVs in, we don't want them moving. So that's where with these rings, you can very easily manage an IV room with just something, a single loop. But it's all going to be preference. You know, um, if an athlete is your patient, they might want the double loop because they probably have some joints that hurt, and so they want to be able to wrap that those knees and shoulders with the double loop. If you have, somebody that is just going to put it in a chair at home and they want a mat, it's just going to depend on your patient on what machine they want. But they can order it any way they like. So they start at 5,500 with these, just the single, and then you start adding attachments on the versatiles. They go up a little bit, but it's right there in the price ranges of IMRSs, Beamers, Curatrons, all the low power devices that you can't feel. These are still the single loop with this is still way less than those devices that you can't even feel. But they're just more versatile. You can do more with them.
It's so fun to think about how much the price has dropped and how versatile they are. I think we paid 30,000 15 years ago for a box. It was, I don't know, it was kind of like a printer size, and several attachments in your training. But it's so nice again to think that you could have multiple units in your office. You could loan them out, rent them out, add them on as an extra service for the IV, make it a VIP thing, just a lot of versatility and option there. And I see preference for sure. And also just the dynamic of your office, whatever, the situation, the logistics that fit you and your patient base and your other services, right? If you're injections, then maybe you want double coils. If you're mostly IVs, maybe it's different, and everything in between. All right, so you talked about some white papers, some information that doctors can, and practitioners, I know not all of you are doctors, can get from you to look further into it. I did share the link. I don't know if I'm not seeing everything well, but I didn't see Vicky posting it, but that like recent study and diagram that I was using or referring to. But where do you have your resources for practitioners to keep learning?
On my website at feelthepmf.com, you go over to the PMF tab, click on science, and you can download studies. You can download the CE report. The CE report is the one I was making reference to today. That if you want to know all the biochemistry behind what's happening with all these different functions, this report, if you read through this report, just have lunch, put it on your tablet and read through it. It's like an aha moment for doctors because they're like, oh, that's why these IVs may not be working, or that maybe that why this isn't doing what it's supposed to, or maybe why this patient isn't getting better is because the energy is not right. And so read through this. It's 20 pages. It's a quick read, and it'll help you get an idea of what PEMF is doing at that cellular level to go through it. And also, I don't know if I put this one up yet, but I think I emailed this one to you, Cam. This little this comes with the machine when you order a machine, but it talks about all what people are using their equipment for. Real quick, it's just like IV therapy, nutrient injections, detoxification support, acute pain, range of motion, and then brain pathway stuff, stuff to do with the brain. And it has like a quick protocol. It has, drink water, use your activated charcoal, things like that. When you're using this equipment, tells you kind of where to place the loops, different things, and instructions how to use the machine. So this is also a good little placard to have, just to kind of like how you would implement.
Uh-oh, I don't know if my internet is down or he went down. I don't know if anybody can hear me or not hear him. His. Okay, he'll log back in. Vicky did post in the chat, so grab that, Sandra. The instructions he just gave, feel the PEMF.com, and then you can go over to the tabs she described and then get down to that CE document. Andrew, are you back with us?
I'm back. I don't know where I went, but I'm back.
The 5G took you away for a minute. Yeah, so go
It
to
did.
feel the PEMF. She's got the instructions there, and he's got lots of information there, including instructional things, but a lot of the science, some videos to help describe things. I think it's even a great place to send patients to learn more about it. I think Andrew makes that quite consumable information, and then of course the information is there for the higher level in practitioners to understand a little bit further. Got the question, where is that? How do they order units, whether they be for home units to retail or home units for their practice, these little $5,500 units?
Right now, they can go to the website on, it sends me their information. I email them an invoice, and a link to pay for it. It's super simple. They can call me. We can talk about the different, how it comes. I'll send them a payment link. They can, run their card on the phone. It's super easy to place orders. But yeah, I'd like to get it to where they're just purchased online quickly. But I right now I just want to make sure that people are getting the right equipment. So I want to make sure that, if they have an IV practice, they're not buying stuff that they don't need or attachments they don't need, or if they're a chiropractor, they should be getting this. So but they will be up on the site soon where you can just purchase some online. But right now you just got to shoot me an email, or give me a call, and I'll get you an invoice and a payment link.
Are you willing to have that conversation with any patient they referred as well?
I am, yes. And I get calls too from patients all the time, and a lot of them will do their research. They go to the website. I have a lot of YouTube videos also. People will do some research on YouTube, and they, they call me like, "Hey, you're the guy on YouTube," So, but yeah, if there's plenty of resources for them to learn on the website, YouTube, and then when they do call me, I will help them choose a machine, and then I create um, in my accounting system, I create how did they get referred. So I have a referral program for those doctors that are referring patients, so they can make a nice referral on these devices also, which is nice. But yeah, they're easy to order, easy to pick when you want, and I'll help you get through it. No problem.
All right, well, we appreciate your time and your expertise. Is there anything left that you feel is important to the conversation that we haven't brought up yet?
Yes, I was going to tell you, I'm going to just turn the machine on, and I want to have you guys watch me pulse with this machine, so you can kind of see strength of it. A lot of times people don't kind of get how strong these are, but the first two settings are designed not to feel, because you're going to have super sensitive patients. First setting, just 10 pulses per second. All the studies at PEMF were mostly on 10 pulses per second or 10 hertz. And the next setting is 7.8, which is your Schumann resonance, which is your alpha state, your meditative states, grounding, earthing. Anybody with anxiety, put them on this setting. It calms them down, especially when they are nervous with needles and things like that. Great setting to start them off with in the office. And then we're going to embed this 7.8 in the next three settings. So when I turn this up, you kind of start to see my hands move a little bit. Okay. It's firing muscle. It's gentle. It's going through. Some people can't even handle this. We actually have to lift up a little bit so that it's off their body a little bit. So until they get comfortable. And then the next setting up, you're going to start to see more shake. Okay. And then the last setting is, it takes a little longer, but it's a bigger pulse. Okay. So just a home unit able to fire muscle like this is unheard of in the PMF industry. There, none of you're not going to feel anything at all with other home devices in general. And then the manufacturers that are out there that make high intensity PMF, I'm not aware of not one home PMF that they're selling. So, and when I say home, it doesn't mean that it's only people in their home. These are medical grade devices that can be used in a doctor's office 8 hours a day. They are designed to be in a medical setting. I just call them home because more people can afford them now. And people don't have to use them in the office. They can actually get one for the house and use it, and the whole family can benefit from it.
Great. That was a good little demonstration.
Did you see this?
You can kind of hear it too. The ones that you can't feel, you can't hear either. You have to have a guider counter that can detect that sound, which is fine. It's low intensity, but these you can hear as well. And then the slower that pulse gets, the more intense it gets too. So the distance between each sound or pulse gets more intense, and kind of hits areas a little bit deeper and more intently for sure.
Sure does.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's so simple though, and there are some contraindications, just a few. If anybody has any electrical devices that are implanted, you wouldn't want to use this. You might mess up that delivery system. Pregnancy, obviously. What are the others? There's only a few. You can't have a cell phone or any devices on
Pacemakers,
your
yeah.
person. Yeah, those, pacemakers, electrical units. But it's really universal. And
The
again, with the
number
setting that you've got, that means you've got stages and tiers that you can work people through.
Yeah. The number one thing that is not good for PEMF are people's car keys, actually. They forget that they're in their pocket, and the little chip in there can get damaged and your car won't start. So I keep little baskets next to the IV room, and they put all their electronics and their wallet and their stuff in it. And then we also have some release forms, that people sign so that they're on file, so they know that they're not supposed to have their electronics when they're in the IV room, getting PEMF on their body. They need to set it down in the basket. So it just becomes part of the procedure. They sit down, oh, let me put all my electronics away. But car keys, you got to be careful with, and also hearing aids. Sometimes we don't see those hearing aids in their ears, so we don't want to damage those either. But, really everything else, screws and pins and, stents and things like that. We've never had any issues with. Just any kind of implanted medical device that has a chip or electricity going through it. We just don't want magnetic fields pulsing through those. So, and then pregnancy, of course, we don't want to take the risk.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, thank you, Andrew. And you guys always have our contact information, info@medmasters.org or trainer@medmasters.org. If you want to follow up with any of these links, we'll put them in the show notes, or the information on YouTube is when we post the video, as well as in that replay video. But Andrew's so great to answer your calls, to answer your questions, to walk you through equipment. Find him to be, and always have found him to be, very honest about what he's got, what it does, what it doesn't, and what other equipment may have and how that compares. So I think you won't regret reaching out for any of those questions. And then we're going to stay on this trend of looking at non-invasive adjuvant therapies for IV spaces or other therapies you might be doing. So our next one, where I had first talked about bringing in low level light therapy, not laser devices, but infrared devices, etc. today, and felt like this topic deserved the whole hour. So next time we will be talking about light devices. There are those, as you know, that we've talked about in terms of treating blood, and that is one way to do it. Again, an IV therapy, more, mildly invasive, but invasive nonetheless. There are other devices also that can work at a cellular level, that you can use in your IV space or the rest of your office. So we'll be talking about those on our next webinar. We'll send you the date here shortly. Otherwise, don't forget to go to our store. We've always got new products there. Become a member and you get access to everything on the store for just a monthly fee, and it never expires. You can use it for your whole staff. We still do our trainings, our ozone and UV trainings, certifications, recertifications. We're always changing things up and updating. So go to our website and our store for more information there. And stay tuned. We'll keep sending emails on what we're going to be talking about next. So enjoy your evening. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Kim.